when I came back in later in the afternoon, I found out that we had orders to go to Bastogne, Belgium. So that was sort of a frantic order we had received, that they were in desperate needs of us, and we were to go to Bastogne and become attached to the 101st Airborne. So
what was roughly the distance from Bastogne from where you're at?
I don't really know, but it took us that night, the next day, and into the next night to get there, and we were constantly under fire from Germans on the road down there. They were, the first night, they were dropping flares on us, and even though we were supposedly traveling without our lights, the flares pretty well lit everything up, so they could see what we were doing and where we were headed. But the battalion, I was sort of at the end of the column going towards Bastogne, being in C Company, and they had reconnaissance out in front, and headquarters battalion was clear to the rear, and I was in the lead of my company with all the tanks and trucks and jeeps and peeps and whatever behind me. And as we got closer to Bastogne on the second night of our travel, the head of the battalion got into combat, and I didn't know about it, but we were sitting there quite a long time, and finally I got out. I was riding in the command car, which is an armored car, and I got out to find out from the tank that I had been following from another company what the problem was, and I went up and I asked the driver what the problem was, and the tank commander, and they said they thought they were lost. Well, I didn't know how long I'd been following a tank that had been lost, and I didn't know where I was because we didn't have any maps since we were going to a strange area. We got to look at a sort of a map like you might get at a filling station to get a general idea of the direction to head to get to Bastogne when we were still in Kohlschreiber, Germany, but we had nothing to go by as we got closer to Bastogne. So I was really concerned that I was in a country that didn't belong in. But nevertheless, we got to moving, and the road that we were on was the right road, and I got into Bastogne. It was nearing midnight, and I just went into 101st Airborne headquarters and reported in to them and told them I was there with a company of tank destroyers, and they said that they really needed help out between Bastogne and Foy. They had all of their parachute infantry out there with no help, and so they told me what road to take to get out there, and said there's a grove of trees a couple miles out from Bastogne on the left side of the road, and they had men there, and if I may just pull in there. So I left 4 of my tanks in town in Bastogne and the kitchen in my headquarters, and I went with my other 8 tanks in, left, then now it's midnight, and went out and found that grove of trees, and pulled in there and reported to the 101st Airborne Infantry that was there, and they said that they had some men further up also that was in Foy, and they would like for me to send some of my tanks into Foy. So I stayed there with 4 tanks and sent the other 4 tanks about a mile on down the road to Foy, which is just 3 or 4 little buildings down there. And of course now we're still in the middle of the night, so didn't know too much about where we were or what things looked like, but we were in the trees with the 101st Airborne, and so we bedded down for the night, what was left of it. And the next morning, I think it was snowing, and I had crawled underneath my command car to sleep, and I had crawled out from underneath there to see what the situation was, and we were getting a lot of artillery fire, and it seemed like small arms fire too, and it looked like tracers was filling the air, and it almost looked like a snowstorm with the tracers. And so I wanted to make sure that the road I'd come in on was covered by one of my tanks. So I got out of my command car and walked over to one of my tanks and noted that he could not fire his gun at the road, and if some tank came down there, he would be up on us before we wanted him to be. So I told him to move over just a little bit to where he could see down this road towards the enemy. And so I got through with that and moved back to my command car, crawled into the command car, and was told that by a fellow that come running up, the fellow I had just talked to with the tank had been killed. So I got on the radio and called our battalion headquarters in Bastogne and told them that we were under heavy fire, and so then about that time I got hit from a piece of shrapnel that would have been a tree burst, and I didn't know what it was, but it felt like something exploded in my chest. And so I asked one of the men in the back of the command car with me to take a look at my back to see what my wound looked like. So he raised up my clothes so he could see my back, and he says, pretty big hole. He says, I could put my fist in it. And I said, well, you better take me into the aid station. So they just started up the command car and drove it with me in the back into the aid station in Bastogne, and got in there, and they looked at me, and they lifted me out of the command car onto a stretcher, and then they loaded the stretcher from the aid station into an ambulance, and there was 3 others in the ambulance, 2 up above and one beside me, and there was 4 of us in it, and they headed us out of town and toward a hospital. And I don't know how they got out of Bastogne to this hospital, because the town was surrounded, but apparently they ignored the ambulance or something at that time, because actually the Germans had orders to kill everybody, and they were doing a good job of that. They were not taking prisoners. So anyway,
were you conscious this whole time? Were you considered rolling out of pain?
They must have given me something, because I remember getting to the first hospital, and the doctor knew me. He had been with our battalion at one time, His name was Doc Lampert, and he saw me laying on the floor on a stretcher, and he came over and asked me what I was doing there, and I tried to answer him, but I'd lost my voice, so I couldn't talk. So he said, well, we'll have you feeling better in a little bit, and they put me on an IV, and pretty soon I was, I think maybe I got an x-ray there, but I'm not sure. But I was given, I was stopped at a lot of hospitals between there and the English Channel. Actually, I think I was wounded on the 20th of December, and the 25th of December I was loaded onto the hospital ship. So it took about 5 days from when I was wounded to get on the hospital ship, and then they took me to across the channel with the hospital ship, and I think I was operated on the 27th in a GI hospital that had been set up near Trowbridge, England, and I was there. Well, they operated on me by making a new incision in my back, because the shrapnel had went in one place and traveled about halfway across my back, and it was in my chest wall. So they went in another area to take the shrapnel out, and I've now got it up here on the wall. And so anyway, it looks pretty good now because I cleaned it up and silver plated it, but it was kind of messy, and it didn't seem to want to look any better at washing it, so I silver plated it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was in the hospital with a heavy infection that they couldn't get rid of, and I was in there for about 2 months when they got a letter from that they brought into me, and said that they had never received a letter on any other patient before, but this had come through Eisenhower's headquarters. But my battalion wanted me back in combat if I was able to be discharged when I was ill.
What was the? Can you describe what the reunion was like when you arrived?
Well, I was devastated when I found out how many had been killed and wounded. I found out that not only was I lost to the command, to the battalion when I was wounded, but I had C Company, and A Company commander had lost 1 leg, and B Company commander had lost 2 legs, and the reconnaissance company commander had lost part of his arm. So lost all the company commanders except the maintenance in headquarters commander there. But we had about 200 men out of the 600 that had been either killed or wounded. So, and that was a devastation to me because I knew these men, and I'd been with them, for several years. And